Welcome, everyone. Happy February 19th. The moon is waning. It's somewhere in the sky, possibly Virgo. I'm not sure really anymore. I have to take a look at it. But Silima, everyone, we are here today. We have some very special guests for us. Tommy Westlund and Katarina Falkenberg. And they are, if I'm not mistaken, from all the video description says, from the Swedish Alchemical Academy, correct? Or is it Society? Academy. Yes. Okay, so we're super excited. I'm here with my fabulous co-hosts, Nikki Ten and Friar Pezzle of friarpezzle.wordpress.com. And we are going to be learning all of the mysteries of the cosmos right here today on this call. So if you're into this type of thing, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Let us know where you're watching from in the chat today. If you have any questions for our guests, pop those in there. We will be keeping an eye out and doing our best to get you the answers that you're looking for. At some point, we will take a look at the sky for the upcoming week or so and get you all of those answers too. So if you're new here, you don't know, my name is Abbey Quinn. I am an ancient astrologer. I'm not technically ancient, but I do ancient astrology. You can find all my information at my website, SumerianAstrology.com. While you're there, you can learn ancient astrology. You can join our free meditation support group, which we have every Wednesday via Zoom from 11 a.m. Eastern to 1 p.m. And you can also learn the Sumerian language, which it's totally free to do. And it is the most extensive Sumerian language course you're going to find outside of a university. I have obviously my readings and the other stuff that I do on there too. So go ahead and check that out. With that, I'm going to pass it off to Nikki. She's in her beautiful, bright, shiny. I love the red flowers. It's a good.
Yeah.
It looks really good. Nice, but kind of almost Valentine's Day, right? Which I forgot existed until the other day. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you want to tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah. I'm Nikki. I am a astronomical astrologer. I take astronomy and astrology and I make them kiss. Yeah. So, no, I'm a constellational astrologer. I have my information down below. I am working on a website, so you'll be able to go to my website pretty soon, hopefully. But yeah, I do astrology and I do natal chart readings, and you can reach me. My contact information is down below. Just send me an email. Just talk to me, and if I can't help you, I'll send you to somebody who can.
All right, Friar, how about you?
Hey, I'm Friar Pezzle, and I'm just a student of the mysteries, and I sit at the feet of great people like Katrina and Tommy. I am more than pleased that they have decided to join us. If you'd like to contact me, I'm available at friarpezzle@gmail.com or at friarpezzle.wordpress.com. Nu shall we.
All right, awesome. Well, with that, Tommy, Katarina, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves, what you do, and kind of how you got on this path?
All right, so glad to meet you all in the ether, and I am Katarina Falkenberg from Stockholm, Sweden.
Oh, yeah, and I'm Tommy. Westlund also from
I'm glad you cleared it up. I wasn't sure.
People always ask. And, well, we are practicing alchemists and have been collaborating since 2006, where we decided, after we had met a year previous, that we shared a common interest and passion about alchemy, and we decided that our task was to spread alchemy to the world. And that's what we've been trying to do since then, by writing mostly books in the angelic language, Swedish, but we also translated with the helps of good friends our magnum opus Alchemy, where we really condensed our understanding of alchemy as much as we could in 650 pages.
Lite book.
Yeah, and the Alchemical Academy, we have, a 3-year alchemical education. We do alchemical journeys to France, England, Malta, Portugal, and so on. And we also have workshops and lectures and so on. And the Alchemical Academy is also something that is, passion-based. So we are trying to get so many as possible to, get into this love of alchemy that we have. And I also have is a head of the Sophia Temple or the Temple of Sophia, that is learning and expanding the feminine tradition, but with a alchemical base in it. So it's a lot of, they are working together, Sophia Temple and the Alchemical Academy.
And
So you've written...
it's very beautiful
sorry.
too. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you've written several books, and we did talk about this in the green room, and you had one that was translated to English. What is the title of that book for our guests? So, or our audience? I'm curious too.
Unofficially called the Alchemical Bible, but it's called Alchemy, the Divine Work. And
Alchemy, the Divine Work. All right.
You can see it here.
Where can people get it? Do they get it from your website?
No.
From Amazon, it's the best. Yeah.
Oh, it's on Amazon? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll put a link in the video description later.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what got you guys interested in alchemy?
Katrina?
Please start.
Many years ago, or incarnations ago, I was quite interested in psychology, and I wasn't brought up in a religious setting, so I became a ceremonial magician to encounter the numinous forces of creation. And the more I got into ceremonial magic and Kabbalistic practices, the more I realized that alchemy somehow was the meeting point of all the esoteric practices that I did. And then I spent many years reading alchemical books, and I didn't understand anything. But I was perplexed. I was still extremely passionate about it. But the more I got into it, and I had some alchemical tutors and teachers, the more I saw how magic, Kabbalah, and mysticism and alchemy were all parts of the same cosmic tree of life. And since then, I've been just passionate about alchemy. Short story. And also a long Golden Dawn tradition history.
Yes.
Yes, long.
Yeah, long.
Please.
I joined the Golden Dawn back in 93, I think it was, and I had been practicing magic for several years before that. So I got my basic training in the Golden Dawn tradition. So first I saw alchemy as a psychological tool inspired by Carl Gustav Jung. But then the more I got into it, I had to leave my psychological interpretation behind, because I had to either my experiences were true in themselves, or I had to force them into psychological interpretation. And then the field of alchemy broadened up, because back then in the 90s, I still had the idea that there is a separation between the outer and the inner, which we today would describe as having still a dualistic consciousness. And alchemy truly, in essence, is that the outer and the inner is just the reflection of each other. And if you do something within or without, it will cause changes, vice versa.
Exact.
Yes. Katrina.
So I started my career as an actress. So I was working in theater. And then it happened that it came a director from Moscow in Russia, and he brought this tradition of ritual theater. And then I learned how to use energies and how to get into a character by changing your energy. And that got me into the esoteric traditions and alchemy. And I also then got to the university and studied the science of theater. And I worked with alchemy to create a new analysis method for theater that worked very well. And then I started to bring those together and did this alchemical theater that I was a teacher of. And then I went to US, to Washington, D.C., and then I started to write from this alchemical perspective. And then I could realize that it was, you can be the director, the actor, and the Holy Spirits are with you, and you can write from this alchemical perspective. So I wrote my first novel and it came out 2005. And then I met Tommy for the first time because of that book. So I've been practicing and studying alchemy for more than 30 years now. So it's really this passion for me.
Is it common in theater to have people interested in alchemy or esoteric practices? That's not a common thing. That was just something that you came across.
Especially not in Sweden.
No, not at all. So it was this Russian director that brought this ritual theater to Sweden. Yeah, really. But then we have done several mystery plays that we combine the alchemical or esoteric tradition or the Egyptian tradition with the theater and try to, bring people in, and they will be a part of this mystery plays. So we have tried to combine these traditions, but it's not common in Stockholm, Sweden at all.
Okay. Friar Nikki, did you have questions?
I do. I'm curious how you would define alchemy, because so many people have so many different perceptions of what alchemy is. And some of us I don't feel like I have a complete grip on what alchemy really is. So I'm just curious if you were going to explain it to somebody who was just discovering it and just wanting to use it on their own. How would you define it, and how would you describe it? And I'm just curious from your perspective.
Yeah,
it's probably complicated.
we tried to define it, and it took 650 pages to define it. But last year, I think, when we were going to the US for a workshop, and most people there were magicians. So I tried to contemplate what's the difference between magic and alchemy, because there is a sort of a difference, while at the same time alchemy utilizes plenty of magic. But one definition of magic is mind over matter. Agree?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then alchemy is mind within matter. So that's what we're working. We're still utilizing magical techniques, but we are aiming to transform and transmute both the material and the immaterial. And we are working with various stages or levels or frequencies of consciousness, trying to make them as refined as possible to manifest as stones of consciousness. And then with that understanding, we can then choose to work with herbs or with minerals or with inner techniques, but always from the position that alchemy seeks to unite the opposites. The king
merge the dualities then.
Yeah, the duality. So the alchemist seeks to unfold the solar consciousness that is able to contain both the masculine and the feminine, the solar and the lunar, the fire and the water, the outer and the inner. And then obviously whole of creation becomes alchemical and magical, because whatever you think will manifest, whatever you feel will be manifested, whatever you do, well, obviously will be manifested. Was that the definition?
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, absolutely. That was really great, actually. Yeah. And it's, as you were speaking, as you're talking about it, it's kind of, I could totally relate it to my practice in astrology. We deal with a lot of different dualities and different planets of psychology. I mean, being a magician, you've worked with astrology, you've worked with those energies. So I love that. I love that, because I try to approach each chart, like each natal chart, like that as well. Like not pendulum swinging from negative to positive, but how can we, merge these energies together and make it make sense? So perceptions aren't distorted, or, you're not giving somebody a message that's, completely negative, that they, a self-fulfilling prophecy then it becomes. So. Yeah. So I'm curious, your workshops, where do you begin? I mean, do you work mostly with other magicians and other like Golden Dawn practitioners?
I think it's a mix, and it's depending. In the priestess education, we have herbal alchemy, and they start to learn how to do the elixir, the alchemical operations, distillation, and so on. In the 3-year alchemical education, we mostly work with the human alchemy. We have all within, and we can work with that. So, but the people that are coming, it's, magicians, it's, interested in pagan traditions, Christian traditions, and nurses, and, priests. We have also
the nurse tradition.
Nurses. Yeah. No, they're coming to this. So it's a mix of people, really. And we can see, because we have done it for several years now, we can see it's a big, in the beginning it was more, you're interested in spirituality or maybe the esoteric, and they are following on, but now it's more people from all over, really. And astrology, of course, many people are coming from that tradition also. So it's a beautiful mix of wonderful people. Really.
I love that. So it's a pretty open practice. It's pretty welcoming then. I love that.
Yeah. And we also think that, the mystery is guarding itself. So we can, get this whole secret of the secrets out, and the mystery will guard itself, and we will give it to everyone. So it's not this elite thinking that it's just for some few people. So that it's the heart in our educations, really.
That actually in the beginning of our collaboration was a huge not point of conflict, but I come from an initiatic background where everything has to be kept secret, and every initiation in any every tradition makes you have to agree to more vows of secrecy. And Katarina, coming from the theater background, used to just spreading out the truth.
Give it out.
I totally think we're living in those times now where we are just going to be letting go of all of those attachments to secrets and hiding everything. And
Exactly. And obviously, as I always try to do, I swiftly changed perspective, but with the difference that I would never things I've received during an oath of secrecy I won't share. But working with that material and incorporating it and trying to understand the essence of it, and then explaining that essence, then in my opinion I haven't violated any kind of oaths, because I've made it into my own practice. And that's why our small alchemy book took 11 years to write, because we early on decided that we will only write things that we have experienced ourselves. So we wouldn't aim to guess or just make it easy to quote famous alchemical authors about the end goal, but we had to actually both agree and compare notes and experiences and to truly get into the essence. And then it's easier to understand how can we teach this to any person, because it's obviously easier if you know that you're teaching to Golden Dawn people, you are going to utilize the Golden Dawn lingo, and you can compare it to the initiation rituals in the Golden Dawn, or the knowledge lectures, or the various rituals. But we aim to be able to share the essence, so that Golden Dawn magicians, witches, people that have meditated once, or
I was actually going to ask, is that the biggest challenge you find with some students, is the meditation part? Because I know myself
Yeah.
find that challenging at times.
Yeah, it is. But we work with meditation, of course, but also with imagination. And it's easier for Westerners to do because it's active imagination. And for us, it's, in the alchemical tradition, the world is created by imagination. And you are in this holy alchemical room that is not outside and not inside, but in between. And there you can work out your karmas, you can work out all the drama in your outer life or inner life. So that is a really potent consciousness that we are working to get the people into this alchemical room in between. And then you can start from that, because it's not fantasy. The imagination is the true language of the soul, the star of the soul from the alchemical perspective. And then you can start to create the outer world from this imaginative work you have done.
Now, creative visualization. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've tried to word it that way, instead of telling people like, oh, you're using your imagination when you do these types of practices. Because they're like, some people, well, I don't have an imagination. I don't know what you're talking about. It's like, we word it differently here. We're creatively visualizing different themes, different futures, different timelines. Let's explore that versus let's fantasize about, I don't know, floating puppies or whatever. Floats your boat. I don't know.
or scrying in the astral, as it is.
Yeah. Well, Abby and I had been talking about it. Well, she had mentioned it, and she was like, do something when you're meditating. Don't just sit and sit in that space. Like, use that time to explore your inner world. Use it to explore the outer worlds. We've had these conversations. So, it's just alchemy is a lot of the same, correct?
And alchemy is filled with so strong archetypical images and illustrations. So the more you study alchemy, and that doesn't even doesn't need to be reading an alchemy book. Just looking at alchemical illustrations, you will sense that your dreams get inspired by those images, and you see these strong archetypes as the king and the queen, or the various nice or quite horrific operations that trigger emotions and trigger ideas and trigger questions. So that was mostly how it started for me, that I could utilize my magical background, and then without truly comprehending why, I could see that the alchemical illustrations describe things that I had experienced through magical practices. And to me, that was really fascinating. And also then coming from a Golden Dawn ritual background, where the understanding is that if you want to invoke an element, you go into a dark chamber and put on robes, and then you close all the windows and light incense and do the invocations. And alchemists say, well, yeah, you can do that, but there is also nature outside. you can do the ritual in nature and actually not just having the earth element as a talisman in front of you. You can actually work with the earth element, because there is Sophia in the alchemical tradition as the guiding light of the alchemist. So it's much more, for me then, I didn't need to confine myself into a darkened temple, but I could take my magical practices outside without, in Sweden, defining myself as a shaman or witch, because those people do it outside, but I could do that also as a Golden Dawn practitioner.
Right. There are many ways to do it once you understand what you're looking at.
Yes.
And also, alchemy is a very organic tradition. The alchemical operations or the phases in the alchemical opus magnum, they all try to convey this secret of nature and secret of life. So by practicing alchemy, you can learn and more get into this way of going with the flow in life. So the alchemical keys, you get one, you open the door, and then there is another key. But it's all going to be an organic process or experimental process. So you don't have to, you don't have to succeed in an experiment. You try it. And when you try it, you see what happens within you, what happens out in the world. And then you can say, that's how it's working. So it's not a faith-based tradition like the esoteric traditions are. But, you get this gnosis, these insights, how to do it. But you don't have to succeed in every time. You try, you learn, and then you get better on this royal way.
Yes, the royal road toward the stone of the wise, the medicine of metals.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is all very exciting for me. I think alchemy is probably the richest and in some ways the most difficult path, because it can be very subjective, and because it is so rich with so much symbolism that it can, especially from the outside, it can seem murky or unclear.
Indeed. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to share our understanding, because when I started with the esoteric path in 1990, they weren't, obviously, you didn't have internet, so you were happy to just find a bookshop that had esoteric books, and we all know that most of the books that are written are not that really good. So and especially when it came to alchemy and the best books that you eventually stumble upon, you can't understand until you are ready for them. So several of my best books I bought in the mid-90s, and it took 10 years for me to be able to understand them and to truly realize why they were so good. So we wanted to write a book that, regardless if you have never heard about alchemy or you have been doing some kind of esoteric work for 10, 20 years, you would still be able to gain information, insights, and understanding and keys from it.
Yes.
So obviously we've gotten some feedback that you should have split the book up in 3 different books. So you have the novice, the intermediate, and the expert. But it doesn't really work with that, because people become experts not by reading books, but by doing daily practices and meditations and contemplations, and utilizing those insights in one's own life on a daily basis.
Yes.
So the book is not written to be read from the first to the last page, but we wrote it to in a circle way. So every time you read a chapter, it will mean different things to you, depending on how far ahead you have advanced in your alchemical practice.
Right.
It needed to be 600 plus pages.
A little book.
Oh, that's good. A little book.
For an alchemical book, anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I've read lots of Paracelsus. I've read, a lot. I think one of the characteristics of alchemy for me, and just to use an example, there was an alchemist called Maria the Jewess that you may have heard of. And she invented what's called the bain-marie, which is where we derive sous vide cooking, where you place your food in a bag in water that is of a very specific temperature for quite a while, and you will get a superior result. And that, to me, characterizes some bits of alchemy, which is to say, it is a...
Nikki.
I'm so sorry.
Nick, okay, yes, your microphone is amazing.
Your microphone works very well.
Yes.
I'm fired. I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Go ahead, Friar. What were you saying? Slow cooking. Yes.
Slow cooking. It's a slow process. It's a deliberate process. And I think that's what's required for certain transformations and changes. And I appreciate the patience that is required. I do know that, again, from the outside, you look at things like the alchemical wedding of Christian Rosenkreutz and how strange that is, or, the green lion that devours the sun. What on earth is that, right? But I also appreciate in a way the safety of alchemy, and not saying that it's perfectly safe. No esoteric journey is, but in terms of allowing that transformation to take place in a controlled way, in a slower way, and those kinds of transformations are ultimately much deeper. So that is one of the things I appreciate about alchemy. I would like to ask you a question about the Emerald Tablet, if you will.
Sure.
The thing that fascinates me the most about that is that these things are done in order to produce or come up with the one thing. How would you characterize the one thing?
From the beginning, it's the prime matter, and in the end, it's the ultimate matter. But it's the same one thing. But it also says that it's not one mind, it's one thing. So it also conveys that it's all the way down to the darkest, heaviest matter is transformed through this alchemical tablet or tabula smaragdina that you're speaking about.
Yes.
And we think it's the code for creation that's in it. So it's really the secret how to become the one mind.
Right.
I wouldn't say it's the one mind, because in Swedish mind translates very badly. It's the primordial consciousness. The primordial consciousness that we are just aspects of, or have uncovered aspects of. The primordial consciousness going back to before creation, that's what we're seeking to unveil, seeking to refine. And still, while we're living in this carnal body and temporal existence, we have this everlasting, eternal fire within that is this primordial consciousness. And that's what from one interpretation, that the Emerald Tablet is working with to achieve the work of the sun, or the work of the solar consciousness.
Right. Okay. That is how I've also thought of it. I tend to cross-compare a lot of traditions, and I have found that many esoteric traditions, East and West, end up talking about the same things in different language. And when I discovered a particularly clear explanation of Dridrisha Viveka, Advaita Vedanta, where you could make a journey to discover your witness consciousness, that I found like there was a lot of similarity. It's just that the path of Vedanta is not nearly as florid or intricate as a path of, say, alchemy. But I do believe that they are striving towards the same thing. There is a separation. There's a period where you do the work of examining all the things to solve, right, as the Baphomet would say. And then there is the special magic. The most important thing is the recombination, the coagula. And that is when you go from, as they would say, the Atman consciousness of realizing yourself as the witness to the Brahman consciousness and realizing that we all have the same witness consciousness. And then that becomes the merging, which is why Crowley, bless him, called the Western esoteric tradition the yoga of the West, because yoga means union.
There is a alchemical tradition within the tantric sampradayas, the different tantric traditions, and tantra has, I don't know if you're familiar with it, it has a lot of similarities, prior to Advaita Vedanta. If there's like some bigger differences, I'd say obviously tantra is very esoteric, it's very secretive, a lot of different traditions, a lot of underground things, very ritualized. But the alchemical tradition within tantra is it relates the chakras to the elements. Now and this is a giant conversation, we definitely don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now, but there's about 30, like in Trika Tantra in particular, there are 36 different tattvas or elements, and of which the earth, air, fire, water, akasha, they are just like the bottom of, all these many, many different levels of reality. But that too, it's basically what Fryer was explaining. So it's all different ways of working up through each chakra to basically realize yourself as the supreme consciousness in, depending on the tradition, either Shiva or Shakti. But it is very similar. I actually wondered if you had ever looked into any comparisons between the Eastern traditions and, technically like, Hermeticism and classical, that's technically Near East or slightly, I don't know how we would classify that, but have you ever looked into it?
Yeah, we have, because we have studied also the Eastern traditions, and you can find alchemy in Tantra, Taoism, and Kabbalah, in all the major religions, in this esoteric inner part of them. And what's special with alchemy is that you are working with these 7 chakras, but instead of focus of going upwards to the crown chakra, you're working from the crown chakra down to the base chakra and going in a spiral into the heart. Because in alchemy, it's very important to combine the spirit with matter. And the heart or the center is, the place you want to go to, because that is the divine fire within you. So matter is not a bad thing. Matter is just spirit in another level. And that's why it's very, tillåtande. Accepting towards the body and the hard materia.
Yes.
And you try to combine them and go into this spiral to the heart. So it's a way of the heart, really. But it's many similarities between Eastern traditions. And you find in Taoism, you find the earliest manuscripts of alchemy. And the Eastern traditions focus more on these everlasting life elixir. That is very nice, I think. And the Western, you have this goal, the material goal, as you know, the goal. So they are working well together. But we are teaching the Western tradition because that's our background.
Right.
But you really combine them in many ways.
And I think that's regardless of which esoteric tradition we could discuss or talk about, as all esoteric traditions are experience-based. If you are being taught something and it doesn't work, you have to either be extremely stubborn to continue doing it, or you will leave.
Yes.
And when we're working with understanding ourselves, and from an alchemical perspective, we try to understand humanity in relation to nature, in relation to divinity.
Yes.
Regardless of what our religious faith may be or may not be. We will, obviously, if we follow nature as a guide, it doesn't matter if we live in Sweden or in the US or in China or in India, we will still have the same living nature to be our teacher, and we will still, regardless of the name of the country, have Sophia as the guiding light of nature, and seeing the progression that happens in nature, going from birth to life to decay and death, and that decay and death results in a new life, and regardless of where we're living, we can follow those stages of nature and the transformation of nature, and understand that that's a mirror of what's happening within us as well. So obviously, then the things that are in common are much more greater than the things that divides or separates it. Mostly the things that divide or separates is based upon the religious belief or the society construction of that time in that region.
Yes. I agree.
Me too.
So do you believe, or do you operate in a way that some would consider Gnostic?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Also, we work a lot in the Gnostic tradition also, and we also have the Gnostic myth as a living myth for all the participants in our educations to work from. But we have, the Gnostic, it's a so broad tradition, and we don't have this negative idea of creation, but not all Gnostics have that also. But we try to get to this insight or this gnosis to realize how is my heart working, how is the divine working, how is matter working. We have to try it or live it in our own life to realize what's the secret of secrets. So it's a very gnosis basis tradition, alchemy, really.
And during our workshops and educations, but also alchemical journeys, we mirror the alchemical process through Egyptian mythology, through Greek mythology, through the Gnostic traditions, through Christian mysticism, through the Sufi tradition, through Eastern traditions, because they all bring pieces of this great jigsaw puzzle that is the refinement of consciousness, or consciousness trying to understand itself from various times, various eras. And sometimes it's easier for us to mirror something from a 2,000 years ago or 4,000 years ago, and realized that they were also trying to do the same thing that we are doing. We're trying to understand ourselves. What happens before we are born? What is the purpose of life? What happens when we pass the threshold of death? What comes behind that, if anything? So today, obviously, in a very materialistic world, we have divided the scientific era aspects from the philosophical aspects, from the religious aspects, from the esoteric aspects, but we still believe in the primordial tradition, where these are just different ways of trying to understand the great secret of creation.
Yes. I gotta say, I would hate to have to try to explain alchemy in Swedish. So you guys are doing really, really great. Jättebra.
It's much easier in Swedish.
So yes, there are various, I suppose, degrees of harshness from different Gnostic traditions, and the one that I find most useful is what I consider a soft Gnosticism, which is to say that the world has difficulties, but they are not evil, they are not malevolent, they are meant to aid us as we overcome them, and in so doing, it helps us in our transformation. That is how I see it. I know there are others who think that, the world was created by the demiurge purely out of ignorance and evil, and that it's all bad, and that the entire reality is just one giant trap and a horror. I don't find that helpful, let's say.
Yeah. And about the demiurge, we also see it's in a way the creator, but the demiurge also have his mother, Sophia. So when we take this, we see the demiurge as the sad child that's trying to create in matter, but can't blow life in matter from the Gnostic tradition. We also have this Sophia component that's blowing life into it. And that is also showing that everything is possible to transform. As with Solomon is building the temple to Sophia, but he needs the Asmodeus, the demiurge, or this demon to help him work with matter. So when you take everything and give it its right purpose, everything can be creative. So that's also the base of alchemy. So it's not a darkness or a negative thing or a demon. It's energy, and when you transform it and you get to know it and give it the right place in your life or in the whole creation, then it can be a partner in this way to transform this whole earth to the golden age, because that's also the aim for the alchemical tradition. We do it with ourselves, and then from ourselves, when we get to know this solar consciousness or the divine consciousness, you can also spread it out in the world. So it's not an ego thing. You work for yourself and you work with a group, and then that energy can go out in the world. But so that's why I think alchemy is such a beauty, because nothing is really bad. You can take the energy, transform it, get to know it, give it the right place, and then you have the darkness and light, and that's the energy for new creation.
Right. And much like the wise King Solomon using the 72 demons or jinn of the Shem HaMephorash in order to build the temple.
True.
That's just a different way of saying that.
Yeah. And we all have a demiurge aspect within us. We all have a fallen Samael or Samela aspect within us. And that contains so much energy that most of us has spent the majority of our life trying to suppress. And if we can face that energy and look and work with it and transform it and transmute it, we become and integrate it in our being, that will be able to lay the foundation of the alchemical and magical temple that we are. And
Yes.
Instead of having clusters in our body and having physical aches or psychological turmoil or spiritual fatigue, we will release that energy and put it into a new use.
Yes.
And that serves
Absolute.
Yes.
Everyone, yeah.
I think about all the different life cycles that we go through as humans, from children all the way up to, death. And I'm curious as to what type of students seek you out. Is it usually like Saturn return folks, 30 and older? I'm thinking astrology, so I'm like, okay. Is this our midlife crisis folks who are like, I've tried everything and now I'm trying alchemy? I'm just curious as to what type of students like seek you out and where they're at in their practices. And I can't imagine like, I don't know, super young. I mean, I'm sure like 20, something year olds are very interested and still like getting into those practices. But the typical human is usually going through a crisis when they're seeking you out. So I'm just curious as to what your observations have been, teaching.
That's interesting, yeah. But I think we have people from 27 to 82. So it's a wide spectrum.
Pretty broad then.
Yeah. And that's why it's so fun, because it's not a typical person like you would think. It's a broad spectrum, but many people have a background doing spiritual work for quite many years.
Or creative work.
Yeah. Musicians and, painting and so on. So, but it's not a typical person really. But mostly of them have had a crisis before. And we call that in alchemy the Negredo phase, the black phase. And most people have gone through it. And, coming out of this Negredo and realize that it's more than, matter, it's more than fame and money and, so on. And then they are coming into this lighter phase and coming to us, and then they have to go through the light phase, but then going down to matter again, and then in the yellow phase. So it's black, white, yellow, and red. So they have had a crisis. They have got to know themselves in a way. Yeah,
I agree, and we have been obviously encountered by people in their early 20s, and the esoteric path, in whichever tradition, obviously requires you to do something on such a regular basis that it becomes, you have to embrace it with your soul, and you have to feel passionate about it. And later years in Sweden, I think people in their early 20s haven't encountered life enough. So they need to encounter life and get through or dive into their personal crisis to start asking the fundamental questions. What is life about? What am I? And then they can be intrigued by alchemy, and especially through the alchemical images and illustrations. And then, as Katrina said, from the mid-late 20s to 80s, we have worked with and encountered all. And obviously, they all come from their own personal background and experience, and some deeply religious in Protestant or Catholic faiths, or in other religions as
pagan
well.
faith, a lot,
and seeing that you can work and understand alchemy as a meta tradition that embraces everything from the agnostic to the atheist to all the major faiths, because alchemy wants to deliver you through gnosis.
Yes.
And obviously, as I said before, when you start studying and reading alchemy and you start having alchemical dreams, you're realizing that there isn't a huge difference between the dream world and the outer world, or you see the illustrations and something truly pops out of
Right.
from that illustration, and you realize that is something that is of importance for me today. And seeing that you mentioned Mary the prophetess before, that my first alchemical, one of my first alchemical teachers, to my huge disappointment, asked me, how are you doing in the kitchen? I said, well, I'll try to stay away from the kitchen. No. That's where you have to learn the basics of alchemy.
Right.
And
Bach tips.
yeah. and it took, I don't know, God or goddesses how many years, but today I'm actually enjoying myself in the kitchen, realizing that whether I do alchemical work within or I do alchemical work with distillation apparatus or something else, the most fun alchemical work is in the kitchen, because we still utilize the processes of Mary the prophetess in the kitchen, and she was also the constructor of the best distillation apparatus couple of millennia ago. And feeling that even as kitchen alchemists, it's still an alchemical and magical process, because you can obviously make the same dish on a daily basis, but sometimes you just fill it with love, and you have the patience with it, and you just listen to it, and you know exactly which spice to add and when, and doing it in collaboration together, and you're looking into this alchemical vessel on the oven. I mean, that's really huge fun, and it becomes a passion of life.
Very good.
Does it work with ramen noodles?
Noodles.
I love that.
And it's also quite interesting that the Maria Prophetissa, she's, the laborative alchemical mother. And then we have Hermes Trismegistus, that is more the philosophical father. And when you combine them together, as alchemy always do, then you have the practice and the philosophy together. And that's a good way to go forward with alchemy.
It's more or less like us. One wants to work, one wants to talk.
No.
Right. I have often suspected that the difference between alchemy and chemistry is the spirit that you bring to the operation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think the modern physics have realized that you can't be an objective observer. The observer will always infuse his or her understanding or ideals or anticipation into the experiment.
But it's also interesting now with the quantum physics. We also can see you work with the dark matter and the dark energy, and the alchemists have worked with that the whole time. But now it's, out in the world, the dark sun, the energy, the black sun in earth, the kundalini or dragon fire. We can see it now as the dark energy and also the dark matter. So these principles are now coming out through this new physics or strength physics also, where you can see you have these levels of consciousness like the strings of the whole creation. So it's a fun time being out now when you have this new physics out, I think, because people can understand also, and combine the physics and the alchemy.
Yeah, I like that because it makes the dark not seem like your shadow side not seem so bad then. You know, it's
No.
more acceptable. I
Yeah.
think I was in my late 20s when I had a practitioner ask me, it was like my 20s or 30s, and they had asked me, who are you without all of the labels? Who are you if you're not the daughter, the wife, the mom? Like, who is that person?
Mm.
And that set me off because I was like, oh, whatever. I'll think about that later. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. And it's something that I've always just had sitting in the back of my head. Like, who am I without all of the labels, without all of the stuff that I surround myself with in my waking life? It gets you diving into, you know, your spirituality and, you know, connecting more with who you are and your soul. So like asking those like, it doesn't seem like it would be a difficult question, you know, like, who are you without all the labels?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like it would be, but once you sit with that,
Yeah.
it becomes something that you can work with and transform.
Yeah.
And yeah. Is that a lot like alchemy as well? Like,
Yeah, because you peel off all these layers from, you know, as you said, mother, daughter, everything in society and your psychology, and you peel it off, and then you get into this essence. But it's not an easy process to
No.
get into this, you know, golden essence of everyone. So that's a good, yeah. And I also think you said, Friar, about this. It's a safe way alchemy before,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I also think that because a lot of people work with this kundalini fire or dragon fire to get it out, to transform everything. But in the alchemical perspective, when you work with this golden essence or your heart, it's the safest way to get this energy up into your being, and working with your subtle bodies that we do a lot with your astral body or etherical body to transform them and heal them. But it's a safe way when you do it from your, you know, soul, your divine essence, or your heart. So
Thank
that's
you.
also yeah, I was thinking about it.
We had a question in the comments. I don't know if it's Gay Royale or Guy. I'm not sure if I'm spelling it right, Royale. So if one prays or says a blessing before you eat, that's a sort of alchemic process, right?
Yeah.
I mean, alchemy is ora et labora, pray and practice. So, and you make sure to bless yourself, bless
Yes.
reality, bless creation, bless your food. And do that not from you can do that from a religious perspective, but seeing that when we eat something, we will actually make an alchemical tincture of it. We will extract the energy from the food. We will do the solve et coagula in our
Yes.
body. Our whole body, and therefore our whole being, becomes this alchemical vessel. So just as you would bless a candle or whatever, or incense before you ignite it, if you bless your food, that makes you conscious about the alchemical process that you are about to start, and you become more aware of the various sensations that happen both on a physical level, on a soul level, and on a spiritual level, and you can sense your subtle bodies being ignited by the energy from the food.
And also think about that, you know, enjoying food, being in contact with your senses. This earth is a beautiful place to be on. You know, the angels are looking down, and, you know, to see how we live on this earth, because when you see that you know, meat or what you eat is also, you know, a blessing. So that's a different perspective also. So it's important, I think, to see that this earth is a divine place, and we can enjoy it in a different way that we can do as souls or spirits or angels or gods. So it's a very grateful place to be, actually, if we see it in that perspective.
I was gonna say, I love the neutral approach, this neutral self-discovery approach versus everything is happy, just look for the happiness, or I like that better, because it lets the person decide which way are they going to go, and are they able to maintain like steady emotional stability through whatever it is that they're going through or working through. I like that approach. It's not super duper positive where you're drowning in positivity, but it's not negative as well. It approaches it with that we can we can take those negative energies and we can turn them into something that we can work with.
I would say that I like the fact that it addresses the fullness of experience.
That's
also,
those are perfect words, Fryer.
Also, I think for people who feel like they don't have the time for extended esoteric ritual, having these conscious experiences at meal times allows you to do the kind of repetitive work that leads you to transformation just by infusing a normal activity with something extra and something special. So I know that for me, I always give my meal as a puja to Krishna, and I find that allows me to stay in touch and to be mindful without having to disappear into the darkened room, throw on the robes, put on the candle, put on the incense. It's part of my life. So for those who feel like esoteric life is just too much, it doesn't have to be.
True.
I agree. How along the same lines, how do you guys feel about the idea of us living in a matrix and using alchemy to help escape from the matrix? Are you familiar with that concept?
Yeah. The thing about alchemy is that we are working with the matrix all the time. And when you are working with your etherical body, that's the matrix for the physical body.
Right.
So you have that concept all the time. And when you work with your astral body and transform that one, you can combine the astral body with the etherical body in a new way. And then you can, this is the angelic body in the alchemical tradition. And then or transfiguration also. And then you can create this new matrix. So we don't feel trapped in the same way as, we are living in a matrix and someone has done it. It's someone behind. And what are we going to do? So the matrix.
You're not a victim of the matrix.
It's a freedom. Yeah, it's a freedom. And it's a beautiful thing, this matrix, because we are working with it all the time.
Right.
And that is creating the material world also.
Right.
But then you can see
because you are the matrix.
You are the matrix. But then we can see from the Gnostic traditions, we have these archons that are, influencing us all the time. We have the planets that are influencing us all the time. But it's seeing how can we be a free spirit and working with these forces to create the matrix that we want to do.
Right. Fantastic. Thank you so much for that explanation. I hope, look, I'm going to say this right now. I hope everybody rewatches this show over and over because these folks are bringing it. I do have a question that is rather specific. And perhaps Tommy may want to address this because you, presumably you were an adept in the Golden Dawn. Maybe not.
Yeah, according to grade, yes.
Yes. And so you have worked with the Tree of Life and the Sephirot.
Yes.
Yes, building the middle pillar, that sort of thing. In your opinion, are the chakras the same as the Sephirot in the middle pillar, or are we talking about somewhat different things?
Somewhat different things. And when we work with our alchemical courses and also alchemical journeys, sometimes we have a more Kabbalistic approach, and then we work with the tree of life. And but as Katrina said before, in the alchemical theosophical tradition going back to Jacob Boehme, we have a Western tradition of working with the 7 seals or 7 chakras in the body, and those are then obviously very similar to the Eastern chakra system, but the understanding and the philosophy behind it differs. So
Right.
from an alchemical magical perspective, we can gain extremely much by working with building up the tree of life, but we also need to liberate and refine the 7 seals, the planetary seals in our being, and those two in combination works wonder. And actually in one of the later chapters in our book, we have a new old model for working with the tree of life based upon the Swedish tradition from the 1700s, where, because the problem with the tree of life, and that's why it's so good to symbolize a human being, is obviously that it's prolonged.
Right.
So we have Malkut as the 10 Sephirot being completely in disharmony in relation to the rest 9 Sephirot of the tree of life. And
Right.
through magical and alchemical work and practices, the aim then becomes to elevate the middle pillar. So you still obviously have Kether, but from Tiferet, Yesod, and Malkut, you aim to elevate the middle pillar. And then the tree of life becomes like a star, becomes harmonious, and matter is not excluded from the rest of creation.
Right.
Yeah.
And
So it's a new matrix, really,
Yeah.
with this tree
Yes.
of life. Yeah.
And to be able to do that, you must have worked with the 7 seals or the
Right.
7 metals or the chakras,
Planets. Yeah.
planets,
Absolutely.
and worked with the tree of life, because the tree of life is obviously from a Golden Dawn perspective and Israel Regardie, we most people start with the tree of life exercise based on the middle pillar ritual, and the Golden Dawn never taught the middle pillar ritual. That was Israel Regardie's genius.
Yes.
I think the beauty of the tree of life is to be able to create the 2 pillars of severity and mercy, because those 2 pillars are the pillars of the mystery. And when Katarina in the beginning mentioned this magical space, the alchemical room, which is not within and it's not without, from a Kabbalistic perspective, that is us standing between the 2 pillars
Yes.
of wisdom. And then we are both working as human beings and as divine beings. We are working in a temporal existence and in an eternal existence. So that's the magical portal that we need to be able to unveil, open up, and I still love the Kabbalistic work, and we utilize that very much.
Lot, yeah.
Excellent.
In our tradition. So,
I
sorry for a very long reply.
No. Ursäkta mig. I've also noticed on the clipotic tree, right, the Citra Acra, the other side, that the primary clipote at the top of the tree represents duality.
Yes.
I would call it the first mistake.
and that's why I think the Golden Dawn tradition, if you would define it in its essence from according to the original authors, it's becoming more than human. Because you have that in the neophyte ritual. I think the Golden Dawn tradition aims at at its essence to first realize how to become a human.
Yes, absolutely. It is a thorough examination of all the parts of self,
Yes.
and that is the basis of the later work.
Yes.
So yes, I've done a great deal of Golden Dawn work, sir, and let me say I am so happy to be able to have this conversation. You have no idea.
I'm happy to hear that.
And from the Kabbalah, we also have this tikkun olam
Yes.
concept that is very important for us and for the world, because that is the restoration of the world. That every person that are working with this, coming into the golden consciousness or the healing process, are a person that are healing the world, restoration of the world. And we can see that we as human beings can create this golden edge. And if we are now in the black, age, we can see coming from that is this the golden age. So Tikkun Olam and working with the Kabbalistic tree of life and the tradition is very good to combine with alchemy to see the the big importance for the whole creation, I think.
Right. And for our audience, tikkun means correction, and olam is the world, so it is to correct the world.
And I think that regardless of which esoteric tradition you work with, when it stops becoming a hobby and it becomes your life path or passion, you have an obligation to the tradition, to the past masters and mistresses, to the gods and the goddesses, to emanate your understanding of this tradition and this goal, and not doing that obviously from an ego perspective, but that's where most of us start. But the more we unfold our inner sun, the more we experience the solar consciousness, the more it is our responsibility to emanate that divine light and love. Love. I'm missing something.
Truth.
Those are the good ones, though. Light and love, those are good ones.
Yeah. But at the same time, understanding that my personal understanding of it is subjective, but the essence of it is something that I need to share. And when we do that, obviously it becomes a tikkun olam. We don't do this only for ourselves. We do it for creation as a whole. We do it as so that divinity will become self-aware. We do it for the fellow beings around us. We want to, if we are in love, we want to express love.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's extremely important in alchemy. And the definition of alchemy, you asked before, it is love.
At its essence, yes, and it's
I love love.
Yeah, I think that's why we're all in this call right now, is because we are in love with something and we're passionate about it. We're tuning into something very old. I don't know if you guys believe in reincarnation, but when you first got on the call and started talking about how you kind of got on this journey, the first thing I thought is, you guys have done this in many lifetimes before. Like, this is not your first rodeo. You've been out here teaching this and sharing it with the world. And I know I have that feeling. I've met other people in their profession where they're doing the same thing. Like they're just coming into it's like a new world where they're able to share this old ancient knowledge, whether that's in the arts or technology or, spirituality, but they're able to share it in a way that they weren't before. And I know some people would really like to go back to, medieval times or prehistoric times or whatever it is. But I personally love technology, and I'm very appreciative of it, because it allows us to share this information for the first time in human history, as far as we know. Who knows what happened, 50,000 years ago or whatever. But it allows us to share that. And I've personally seen the difference that makes in people's lives. I've seen it, and I'm sure you have too. It's affected people and so positively. obviously from an astrological standpoint, there's definitely bad information out there, and that can be detrimental. But when it comes from a place of true knowledge and love and devotion, and not from some, selfish source, not from ego, it really can make people's lives better. And I'm sure that's the same thing that you guys are doing with alchemy, and what Friar does, and what Nikki does. And, so I'm very grateful that you guys are taking the time. That goes for,
Yes.
Everybody on the call today, and everybody out there who does this. It's not an easy thing to get on YouTube and talk to a bunch of strangers or X or wherever. So I do appreciate it.
Yeah.
I
And I think about technology, it's the same as with the demiurge or the archons. You have to put it in the right position. You have to use it from your heart or from your soul. But if you think that it's the soul, then it's a problem. So it's the same with technology also, to use it in a flowing way, really.
yes.
But I'm also interested in this Sumerian astrology, because we also come into contact with the Sumerian tradition. We work a lot with Inanna and Dumuzi. We have in the book, we have a ritual based on the Inannas going down to the underworld and meeting her dark sister.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I just wondered, the Sumerian astrology what is it?
Great question. Well, the short answer, and we'll actually jump on the sky here and take a look at it, and you'll get a little taste for it. I can go through and give you some examples, but basically what's going on was, prior to the classical period, astrology existed in Mesopotamia for at least 2,000, but possibly 4,000 years. And there is some evidence, albeit scant, that it goes back to the end of the last ice age. I personally don't think that the Sumerians created this knowledge, that they came up with it themselves. Just like I don't think they invented writing. I don't think they invented the wheel, agriculture, all of the things that modern science attributes to them. I think that their knowledge was inherited from older times. And we can see this because they don't seem to understand. They don't have instructions on how to create these things. They're basically just coming on the scene, and they have all this information. Yeah. So what I do is the same thing we would have done in the Sumerian period, which is we look up at the sky. We consider those deities, being Inanna or Enlil or whoever we're looking at. We look at what constellation they're in. Now in Mesopotamia, the constellations were just houses or areas of the sky that did have meanings, but the planets, the gods, behave differently depending on their interactions. Now all the planets were family members. All the gods in the ancient time, in the Sumerian period, were related to each other, so they would interact with each other differently depending on what was going on or what house they were in, what area of the sky. And as far as the Sumerian information goes, I do some of the Babylonian and the Middle Akkadian, Assyrian periods, but for the most part, I try to use the oldest information that we have from the Sumerian myths, as far as what the planets, what the gods were all about. If you want, we can actually since that's on our agenda anyways. We can go ahead and take a look at that.
Are we going to put up the ancient ghosties?
Yes. Well, I can. Spirals Gazikas put a message in there saying thank you for all the good information, but then deleted it for some reason. So I don't know. Maybe there was a typo. All right. Let me pull this up real quick. I'm going to share the screen. I'll go ahead and I'll give my take on it, and then we'll have Nikki do the same. So, and if I disappear on you guys, I will be right back. It's just I crashed my StreamYard real quick, which does happen. All right, stand by. In 3, 2, 2.5.
Also.
Okay, can you guys see that? Yeah, we can see it. All right. Yeah. Is it moving? Yes, it's moving. All right. So this program that I'm using is Stellarium. You can download it for free at is it going to move on me? Yeah, okay. At stellarium.org. It is completely free and open source. It is updated regularly, and it is awesome. Now, the reason why I use this is because, again, I do ancient astrology, and Nikki technically does too. If you're an astrologer and you use the constellations, you're doing it the same way we would in ancient times, which is this looking at the sky and pointing. And if there's planets that we wouldn't have been able to see because it was bright outside, in ancient times, we would have been tracking the movements of all the planets. We would still know where they were at in the sky, and we have records of this. So right now, the sun, who was Utu or Shamash, is in the middle of Aquarius. Now, this figure was Enki. He was the god of knowledge and wisdom and pretty much all of the awesome things that separate humans from the other creatures on the planet, which means the arts, the sciences, refined communication, magic, although they all had their various forms of magic. I don't want to limit it. So here, while the sun is here, and again, some of this happens every year around the same time. If anybody out there wasn't aware, takes 1 year for the sun to go through the entire zodiac. Hopefully this isn't news to anybody. But while the sun is here, all of these efforts are just coming to life. So this allows, now the sun relates to, if you read his myths, it's going to tell you that he's a god of justice and law, but none of his, if you read the descriptions of him, but none of his myths actually do anything like that. He's a protector. He's a guide. He brings light and divine justice and mercy and blessings into the world. He's pretty much just the divine light that comes in to help everyone. He's always helping his sister Inanna or Ishtar over here, Venus. He's talking her off the ledge when she's having like an emotional breakdown. He helped her pick out her husband. So anybody that he's near into in the sky, he tends to kind of overpower them a little bit, as the sun does. You know, right now the sun's close to Mercury. You can't really see Mercury in the sky. But while he's there, he's softening their very extreme energies, and he makes them more fluid, more intuitive, and he kind of, calms them down. Now, in the case of Mercury alone here in Aquarius is very intense intellectually. This probably explains some of my, I don't know if you guys could tell when I got on the call today, my voice wasn't working. That's because I spent a solid 10 hours just doing research and putting this chakra course together, which I will have more information about for you guys at a later date, so don't worry about that. But this is good research energy, okay? This is all, Mercury's all knowledge and learning, and basically sucking in the information and transforming it into wisdom and knowledge. Now, what's interesting is in the Mesopotamian version, Mercury was also associated with Adad, not just Nabu, who was very similar to Mercury in the classical period. But he was a god of, he was a water deity associated with bringing the rains or holding them back. And all of the water element in Mesopotamia was the creative element. The name for water in semen was the same word. It was A. And it also happened to be very intimately connected with Enki. Enki lived, he was the master of the freshwater abyss that was believed to be, well, both under the ground and in the sky. The Mesopotamians, or at least the Sumerians, they didn't believe that the earth was flat. That's not a real thing, but that's another conversation. But anyways, he's also a god of all this knowledge and wisdom. So when you put Mercury, which is already this watery planet, in here with Aquarius, we end up with just intense creative energy. Now, the cool thing about the combined sun and Mercury this close together means that the sun's softening some of those very left brain logical traits and allowing more intuitive thought to come in. So anybody out there right now, like most people, because again, this is a general forecast and how it affects every individual is going to be a little bit different depending on their natal chart. But this is actually benefiting everybody right now. It's allowing everyone to be more intuitive in their thought processes. But if you're engaged in this type of creative work, or you do this for your profession or a hobby, you're going to notice the benefits or the effects of this that much more than everyone else. Now, Saturn's still right here between Aquarius and Pisces. He's going to be here, for a little while, and he's been kind of slowly moving through Aquarius. in Mesopotamia, Saturn was Ninurta. He was a god of adventures. He slayed demons. He was pretty much awesome at everything he did. You didn't want to be on his bad side, but pretty much all the warrior gods back then, you didn't want to do that. So Saturn does not have any of the negativity that we find in the classical and medieval period. He was wholly just successful. Okay. Now he is very much related to society. He was credited with basically creating civilization, or at least the conditions that allowed civilization to flourish. So his placement here, moving between the more scientific and technical Enki or Aquarius, moving more into the fish of Pisces, which were sacred to Nanshe, who is the altruistic goddess of widows, orphans, and the infirmed, and also spirituality, psychic abilities, bounty, blessings, all that good, warm, fuzzy stuff that we all enjoy in life. His movement into Pisces is pulling us out of this maybe hyper technical energy that we've been dealing with, especially over the last 5-ish years. I'm generalizing. And it starts to allow people to become more awakened, more spiritual, more tuned into the natural currents and also each other, and like really allow people, and this is going to be a long transit, obviously, it's going to allow people to kind of come back to themselves, come back to nature. And this is going to be that much more prevalent. I know you can't see him in here, but Neptune's right over here too with Venus. And that's going to be a very long transit all the way up until I think like 2040. Neptune is a planet very much like Enki. It's a communication technology planet. And his presence here is we're going to see this shift over the next, 5 to 10 years, depending. Where people, their reliance on technology is not necessarily going away, but the emotional and I would even say spiritual, energetic dependence on it starts to fall away. Now, Venus here, Venus was basically, we could equate her to Nanshe and Anunatum, these two fish of Pisces. So her in over here in Pisces is a very soft placement for her. She was the god of war and victory as well, but in this area of the sky, she's much softer. She wants to love and nurture and give and connect to people, especially emotionally, spiritually. So while she's here, that's obviously going to be a good thing. Jupiter still conjunct with Aldebaran, and this has been going on for quite some time. Again, Aldebaran was very similar, was associated with Mercury. So, and the entire bull of Taurus was very Mercurian in that it wanted to eat information and it wanted to do something useful with it. It wanted to create. This was not a fat, lazy cow eating grass in a field somewhere. This was the bull of heaven. It was a symbol of divine creation and power and virility. And it was very much concentrated right here in Aldebaran. The Hyades over here in particular, where we now see these horns of the bull, these were associated with Adad or Mercury, and they were related to creativity. Now, Jupiter, this was Enlil, and he was basically the master of the universe between the supreme creator god Anu and the actual Earth. So he created the constellations, or at least in the mythology, So this is like he's divine power. This is a phenomenal placement for anyone to use creatively, intellectually, or even from a place of service. Now, this is a slow placement. And again, I don't know what anybody's chart out there looks like without having actually looked at it. I know for me and other people in creative careers, this has been an amazing placement. This is like you're making changes and it's huge. And they're usually changes that positively impact other people. Mars was a deity known as Nergal, or Era, as he was called in Babylon. And he was the god of war, death, pestilence, and the underworld. But he was actually, even though he was very hyper masculine on the outside, he was actually very soft and vulnerable internally. He felt fear. Sometimes he cried. He was easy to manipulate into doing some bad stuff periodically. But he was also a devoted consort. He lives happily ever after with his wife Ereshkigal in the underworld. He also protects. So he's not like, as a god of the underworld, he's not in there like torturing people. He's actually protecting all the spirits who live in the underworld. And these two figures in Gemini, these were versions of him. They were called Meshlamtai and Lugalira, and they're basically epithets that refer to his ability to be able to leave from the underworld as well. They were dressed as warriors, and they were brothers in arms. So it ends up with Gemini being a very empathic constellation, very much related to deep emotional connections. So Mars's placement here enhances that intimacy between these types of connections. Now, the downside to this is sometimes this increases like heart chakra and sacral chakra type of, and even the navel, different types of sensitivities and vulnerabilities. Sometimes if you're not taking care of yourself, you're more susceptible to illnesses, but it doesn't have to be that way. You just have to do the self-love. You have to do the nurturing, and you can't allow stress to get to you. So sometimes this can be a tricky placement. Again, it's going to depend on what you have going on in your natal chart. What else do we have? We're not going to do the moon. I do the moon on the other days because it's just whipping around, and we definitely don't have time for that. And I think that's everything, you guys. Does that sound right? I hit the major ones. Yeah, I think so. Okay, Nikki, do you want to?
Yeah, you did. We have our last quarter moon this week, actually. Which I the quarter moons can be a little bit stressful, I think, for some people. This one will be in Scorpio. So, we have the sun and we have Mercury and Aquarius making that square to Scorpio. And I really feel like it's kind of, we're asking ourselves as we're wrapping up this cycle, like we're getting a little bit deeper, we're digging deeper into our emotions. What it is do we, really want? What kind of changes and what type of things can we do to change our directions in life? How can we be more innovative, and how can we use our imagination and inventive nature to create? So I am hoping that the energies were just a little spicy this cycle. It kind of took me by surprise after the full moon, but yeah, we'll experience that last quarter moon. It'll wrap up. What else do we have going on this week? Mars goes direct in Gemini this week. So Mars is our physical strength, our endurance, our readiness to take on the world and conflicts. But in Gemini, he's more or less on that mental plane. Exploring different ideas, exploring, visualizing goals, connecting with our tribe, debating difficult topics. Gemini, on its shadow side, that energy can be really scattered. You could feel like you're not really focused, or it could feel like just a shotgun blast on the if we're talking worst or on your worst days, a little scattered. Me personally, Mars has been in Gemini has made my brain just go, and I've had a really hard time just pulling it all together. And I know I'm not alone. So Gemini is very cognitive, very much emotional. I don't get the whole, coldness, like the Gemini, logic, and they're just so logical that they're, scientists and and they just like this logical approach. I find it to be a very emotional, watery sign. I like the deeper connections. I like the the deep imaginative qualities that Gemini has. Let's see. Yeah, with it going direct, we should be able to take all of these dreams, imaginative visualizations that we've had while going and working through our shit, and putting it out there and actually beginning, and just making our dreams, putting it into reality, moving into Cancer. I haven't gotten that far with Mars yet. I feel like a bad astrologer today because
you're doing a fine job.
Yeah, I've just had a lot going on. I haven't had a chance. Looked at everything right before I popped.
We have time. Mars won't be in Cancer for a little while.
Yeah, for a really long time, actually. Let's see, what else? What else is going on? Okay, so Saturn is going to be going into Pisces as well. I just want to touch on like the things that are going on this month. So I'm pretty sure Saturn's moving into Pisces, and I really loved the video you put together. You did like a live stream, and you talked about Saturn moving into Pisces. I believe you did. And Pisces is like those starry-eyed, childlike dreams. We have like a lot of fantasies. But Pisces is also like selfless and giving. I think Saturn moving into Pisces is really going to help us get a better grip on our own self-identities. Pisces can get lost and lose themselves, I think. And Saturn can really just come in and add some stability, in my opinion. I think Saturn adds a lot of stability. I don't think Saturn gets pulled apart in Pisces. I think Saturn adds a lot of, logic and foundations and really just, knocks any, what I loved, like the idea of like castles made of sand, they just get knocked down. If there's a foundation that isn't sturdy, I mean, Saturn's going to knock it down, and you're going to find that in Pisces. So if there's, old emotional garbage you're clinging to, karmic ties you're refusing to let go of, just being all around stubborn, I think Saturn's going to, knock your castle down. So, unfortunately, it's just the Saturn likes to build strong foundations. So we'll see as he moves through Pisces how that works. I've got to actually go back and look to see when the last time, like what was going on in my life when Saturn was in Pisces last. I haven't gone and done that. But yeah, leaving Aquarius, I think he has the power to shape his future in Pisces. And that's about all I got today. We'll wrap it up.
Thank you.
Wrap it up there.
All right.
Yeah.
I have a thing.
Okay.
What thing?
It's a thing I like to share on the screen, and I would like to get the commentira from our lovely guests.
Let's do it.
On this thing. So bear with me as I navigate the wonders of StreamYard to share my screen, because sharing is caring.
When we were talking about technology, my computer just drained. The battery just went like that. I had to struggle to plug it in.
Having too much fun. It could feel the energy.
Yeah, I know.
I would love to find the thing I want to share.
Kazikas says, each great culture from Sumerian to Greeks to Egyptians tells a parallel tale of cosmic creation centered around planets and zodiac signs. What deeper truth lies beneath these stories? Heck yeah, I'm on board with that. I 100% agree. What do you got for us, Friar?
I have something that I would love to hear commentary on from our wonderful, wonderful guests.
Well, two of the diagrams from the 5-6 initiation and the Golden Dawn tradition, where the world that we live in is the one to the right, the Garden of Eden after the fall, where we have these various telluric fires, we would say, or demonic forces to some extent, or the serpent, and we have the huge cross that divides the upper part, the eternal, from the temporal existence. And we have the seven, in Malkut, we have the seven seals or metals or chakras that we need to refine and awake and balance, because in the alchemical and the hermetic tradition, the chakras or the planetary seals have a duality within them. They both have a virtue and a vice.
Yes.
And if we just awake one of those chakras or seals, we will awake both the virtue and the vice, or the light and dark aspect of it. So that needs to be done very, very consciously, and obviously in this diagram to the right, we have the flaming sword sort of protecting the eternal world. You could say that from an initiatic perspective, it's the guardian of the threshold that
Yes.
you need to prove yourself worthy to. Before that, the guardian of the threshold becomes a demonic aspect that tends to lure you away from the esoteric work, whatever tradition you're working with, and reminding you that this Netflix series is out, and that's much more fun than doing your meditation practice or doing your ritual work or the alchemical work, or someone calls you. And when you realize that all of these are tests and trials for you to prove to yourself and to the tradition that you're working with that I'm completely embracing this, I'm not allowing other things within or without to get in my way. You have still an access to the divine world through the flaming swords, and the 4 cherubim above the cross will then become helpers as the refined pure elements. And that's something about the right picture. Do you want to say something about the left picture?
It was quite good, that one.
Yes.
Whereas the garden before the fall, we're not talking about the biblical interpretation of it, but the garden before the fall in an alchemical aspect is the golden age. And the golden age is where humans and divinities were living next to each other, and humans were praising divinities, and divinities were helping and serving humans. There was a balance in creation that the fall created a barrier between. And that barrier to a huge extent is a barrier in our consciousness, that we don't see gods and goddesses walking next to us. Doesn't mean that they're not there, but we don't see them, we don't acknowledge them, and thereby we are also stopping there or hindering them to assist us. And we don't pay homage to them any longer. So the primordial tradition and the golden age is not going backwards to something. It's developing our faculties and comprehension and understanding. So we have these 2 pillars. We have in the left pictures, we have here the gray pillar and the black pillar, and we have the white pillar. We have a balanced aspect of the 4 elements. We have this awakened 7 seals or chakras, or in alchemy the telluric fire that is both macrocosmic and microcosmic. We can feel this telluric fire beneath us, just as we can experience divine grace above us. And then we are able to become travelers through existence. And the ideal is, from an alchemical perspective, is not to ascend and just become one with the Godhead or Goddess head or divinity, but to bring this unity back into creation, and thereby having these fruits of the tree of life spiring in the illustration, the Garden of Eden before the fall. And that's a Western esoteric interpretation of the state of consciousness of the golden age, where you don't have a conflict between women and men, or between masculinity and femininity, or between humans and deities, or even between existence and demons. Everything is part of the primordial unity that has spread into motion. Yeah, that's my short information.
Thank you. I want our audience to please realize that you just got an incredible mini lecture from someone who is at least an adept, if not a magister templi. Like, this is not something that happens very often. Please appreciate it. I will say for my part, well, first of all, thank you very much. I will say that the work I do with clients involves us getting into communion and talking with these here. We talk to these aspects of you in my sessions, and in so doing, we're doing the work of turning what seems like our enemies, which is our will, our emotions, our thoughts, and our body, into our friends to clear the way. So I want to thank you so much for that little mini masterpiece that you gave us. So thank you.
Please don't ask me to repeat it. It's recorded.
It's recorded.
I have a question. Or Friar, did you have more questions?
No. I just want to say,
questions are probably
thank you so much.
Better than mine, so that's why.
No,
Oh,
please.
Okay, so Friar and I have had a conversation, or had multiple conversations about the Tree of Life, and I had asked him. So I'm putting together a course on chakras, which also involves chakras and astrology, which is a whole separate thing. Then, well, it doesn't matter. But I asked him if he knew of any correlations between the Tree of Life and the chakras, and it sounds like, if I'm getting it right, that there aren't. That's what I'm gathering. But I haven't heard, I don't recall, Friar, you talking about what these 7 seals, like, what are these 7 seals? Because that's at least sounds similar.
So on the Tree of Life, there is a central location, and you can look at the geometry of the 7 Sephirot in the center, with the sun in the center, and then the 6 classical planets around it. That's what you're looking at there. It's also known as Zir and Pin. It is when you become an adept, you move into that place of the solar consciousness where you're able to get a good look at these 6 other classical planets, which represent aspects of you. Your Saturnian nature, your Jupiterian nature, your Martian nature, your Venusian nature, your Mercurial nature, and your lunar nature. So the adept realizes that they are standing in the center of all of these wonderful things. The way I've been thinking about it, because there is an author, I've been researching in the interim since we've been talking about this. There is an author who was a Golden Dawn adept who is certain that they are in fact the same. I am yet to be convinced. I know that in the Golden Dawn, we sort of build an awareness of those 4 trees in the elemental grades. So you would imagine those stations on your body. The Sephirot would be in different places, and you would use a formula of vibration to come to a realization of them slowly over time, so that you are in essence building an awareness. And in a strange perhaps way, you are kind of creating them, at least in your imagination and in some sense in reality, because you feel that vibration and it's kind of real. And that happens, I suppose, in your sphere of sensation, to use Golden Dawn terminology. But what I'm looking at it as right now, just a simple analogy, I feel like the chakras are the burners on the stove, and the Sephirot that we build in our body are the pots of water that we place on them. And so perhaps it is that the coincidental placement of some of these things allows the power of the chakras to energize these various Sephirot. Again, that is that's me. That has nothing to do with any actual teachings, but I'm just trying to think of a way to realize that they can be in the same places but not the same things.
Well, and that's the thing. I don't think we should get too hung up on the location of the various chakras. I think the breakdown of the different areas of life or the different realities, like I think that's where the overlap lies. When we start talking about like the specific areas of the body, I don't think that's necessary. So I don't know. We definitely have to have this conversation though, and like tag team it, because
sure. And for the Golden Dawn, it's just a way to create a deeper awareness is all. It's in some ways it's a very interesting game of imagination that can make something, I would say, semi-real, if you will. So that's my take on it. It's interesting to see the different opinions. I need to dig up my Regardie middle pillar stuff, because I do believe he talks about that, and I think Crowley may have mentioned it, although I'm going to give more weight to Regardie, obviously. But it would be interesting to see what he had to say about it, because if nothing else, he was certainly a smart person.
Yeah.
So
and I also think that it's depending if you work with the physical body, the etherical body, and the astral body.
Right.
They are a bit different, these 7 seals or this planetary consciousness. So it's not so easy to say, it's that or it's this, but you have different aspects that are combining good with the tree of life, with the 7 planets. And the 7 planets are going to be combined with the 7 chakras. So you can absolutely put them together, but it's a bit different regarding which body you are working with. If it's a physical, etherical, and astral, or beyond this transfiguration body.
Right.
Yes.
And these would be the... Please.
I was just going to add that the version that we are working with very much with the 7 planetary seals, that's from 1736, from the Christian theosophical understanding. And anyone that's do a Google search on Western chakras will come upon that picture.
Or Gestalt.
Gestalt's illustration.
Okay.
And it's extremely fruitful to work with, but we contain so many energy centers, so our consciousness need to be able to project a map upon us, to focus upon it, and then working with the chakras require us to some extent to have an understanding of the tradition of the chakras. Working with the Gestalt planetary seals is more of a mystical alchemical tradition. Working with the middle pillar, which, if I remember correctly, Regardie actually wrote that it's very similar or more than similar to the chakra system. That brings the map of the tree of life and the Kabbalistic tradition into consciousness. So they are all working, they are all effective, but your understanding will differ depending on which tradition you are immersed in.
But it's very nice when you're working with people from the Eastern tradition, when we put this, Western esoteric tradition from the Gestalt model, and you have this Saturnus chakra on the head, for example, and that goes fine into the Kabbalistic with Bina. So it's good. You can have the Eastern tradition, and then you can combine with this Western tradition and see what happens, because it gets, new revelations, new keys. It's not this or that one is the best or good, but it's new revelations and new energies that are coming with combining the both systems and the tree of life.
Excellent.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I had so much fun. I'm so glad that you made it today and we got you guys on, and good thing we recorded it, because a lot of good information in here, obviously, for posterity, for the universe, for the world. Yes.
I feel
a pleasure. So very happy to have had this conversation and discussions and going back and forth and sharing ideas and sharing love.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it's all about, right?
Yes.
Well,
And thank you for the crash course into the Sumerian astrology.
Yeah.
That was intensive.
Yeah, it was.
yes, intensive. That's a good word
Really.
to
Yeah.
describe what I
Yeah.
do. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So thank you very much, all of you, really, and all out there in the ether.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
everybody who joined
Please
us today.
look
Go
look
ahead.
these guys up and work with them if you can. These are amazing, sweet, very knowledgeable people, well loved in the community, I assure you.
Yes. Their links are going to be in the video description. I'll dig that book out, and I'll put a link in the your guys' book. I'll put a link in the video description for that too. Other than that, we'll be back next week, same time, same theme, same knowledge, I guess. So join us next Wednesday. We'll be here, and you guys take care of yourselves out there, and that goes for everybody out there too. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.
Tack, tack. Hej då.
Tack, hej då.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Paka paka.
Adios.